Do, do, do. Right, again. Okay. All right. Matsotsoi live stream. Hungen. All right. Hungen, half a day, half a day. All right. Matsotso Pogwe live stream. Biba. Biba.
Viva!
All right. Half a day, todo Samzu Gwena Hudzong. Biba 2025. Hunggan esti segundo na episode Fanatsu para esti 2025. It is the second episode of Fanatsu for 2025. Guahui host midzo talo si Michael Luhan Bavakwa. And Hunggan gof mag of Zunai para esti nuevo na sakan mag of Zunai na be kumbida tate un tauto esta makumbida esti na kabadzero para esti na podcast low gimapos na sakan. Last year he put out a new book, a very very interesting book, and if you remember Estina Tautau, you might be intrigued. You might be intrigued to see the book that he has put out there. And so that's why Gof Magov Zunai Kumumbida Estina Tauto si Jay Baza Pascua. He was a journalist on Guam. He is a chanter. Many of you have seen him chanting with his susu out there, with his spirit out there, you know, proudly representing our people in song and in spoken word. And so he has been out in the States for a little while, and now he is here on Fanachu for this episode, but he is sharing with us a book that he has written. And I'm very, very excited to hear more about it and to share and to be talking about it with all of you. The name of the book is The Rules of Engagement in Storytelling. And so, for somebody who many of you may remember, Sasi J and some of you, I mean, Paraguajo, esta middle-aged Zeus. So I'm very much about aging people. When you reference something, you age yourself, right? So if you reference this, then you say, "Oh my God, my goodness, that person was there for the '80s." If you say this person was there for the '90s. This person was there in the 2000s, and so on. And so you may remember Jay as a newscaster on Guam. You may remember Jay as part of the Sinanganta, the spoken word movement. Uh, you may remember him from the Fakmata, from the chants, the beautiful Harao chant and so on that he did. Nowadays chanting is so much more commonplace, uh, because the Chamorro Renaissance is such a more comfortable part of our lives. But we owe so many people who chanted, who went out there and chanted, even when it was a little bit more uncomfortable to do that, to put yourself out there. And so Jay was definitely one of those who was out there, who was putting his whole spirit and his voice into it. And so many of you may remember Jay from that. He was on Fanazu about 2 years ago talking about his life as a chanter, sort of Finohadza, talking about connecting to our ancestors through that. And today he's here going to be talking to us about storytelling and how we can use the art of storytelling in our personal life, in our professional life. And I'm very, very excited to hear about that. And so Hafaday J, si Zeus Masi Talo, nay. Para ifinato mo para Fanatso.
Today we get to Juice Masi, Saina Masi, na kumbiri magi gini. Man, golf magufzo, nagagu gwini tatlo. Otsibai ni usanga un song and put half song and put imapus ungen puri lalai puri poema za hafa u keketsogi para I cultura edzigi un faisinzu podezu gi edzu na episode lo pagu. What we're talking about today is the rules of engagement in storytelling, but And it sounds like there's a difference or maybe not a correlation, but really it is. There is a definite correlation between chanting, the culture, and now my purpose. And so the reason I wrote the book, The Rules of Engagement in Storytelling, is to live in my purpose. I'm now the storytelling strategist. And storytelling, whether we choose to believe it or not, is encoded in each and every one of our each and every one of us. There's the DNA of storytelling in there. Now, it may not have been our immediate parents or elders, maybe it's a distant relative, but definitely stories have been passed down for generations. And with us in the Pacific Islands, that's how we have our history today. It was through a lot of verbal and oral traditions that were passed down. So to me, it was just an evolution in who I am as a storyteller. And it's so appropriate to me that you brought up the last time I was on here because the way I got into storytelling in the beginning was I was encouraged to write a chant, to create these poems through chant. And a lot of them were warrior poems. And but what the person said to me, there was a defining moment, and it was someone who allowed me to think deeper. He said, "You do voice acting. You tell stories through those characters. You tell stories through your poems, your chants. You used to tell stories as a reporter. So you're not just a chanter. You're not just a voice actor. You're a storyteller." And up until that moment, that to me, that was my pivotal moment. Up until that moment, I did not make that connection. And so from that moment on, I started viewing myself as a storyteller, but only because someone who heard me, who listened to all the chants that I did, suggested to me that I am. And it made sense. And so now, all these years later, following my professional career in the call center business, I'm encouraging other people to tell their stories. Now, it could be in brand building, it could be in content creation, or it could be just telling the story of your culture, your heritage, your language, all the things that make you unique and you. So I know that was a long response.
Hey, bonito and no, Sejus Masi, and thank you for making those connections because I love to I love it especially because I was listening to one author this morning who was talking about how audiobooks have become so popular nowadays and when I was growing up, of course, audiobooks were looked down upon as not really reading because you listen to it and you're not holding a book. It's not the written word, quote unquote. But then when you think about it, in some ways, an audiobook, somebody performing for you, reading and putting their voice into it, is closer to how human beings have communicated for most of history, stories, knowledge, and so on. And so, and it's something that indigenous people have lived with, but then indigenous people we were taught was bad or worse than writing something down. And that but so that's why your focus on storytelling and opening up that idea, that's what I found to be very important in what you were sharing there, is that and how even we need to think about how, well, don't think of storytelling as just something which this type of writer does, or only, you know, Stephen King isn't the only type of storyteller, or the Marvel movies are not the only type of stories out there, or we may get stuck in thinking that only these are the only types of stories if it's got $100 million behind it, or if it's at the top of this bestseller list, or if it has these conditions to it. And the problem though is that then we end up taking ourselves out of the game, and so that's what I liked about the way you were grounding yourself in that, and thinking that no, that even in terms of uh the chanting and the stories that are within the people, even if they don't use the word chanting, even if they don't use those very words, is that the rhythm, the energy, the essence can still be there. And so I liked the way that you were opening up some of these ideas. And oh my goodness, we've already got some people that are commenting and saying half a day. We've got some people who are saying that they remember you presenting. We've got Bobby Benevente who says that she remembers you presenting at an annual Youth for Youth conference as a poetry presenter. And there's somebody who is commenting and saying that they remember you. Wait, I think they remember you from Inarahan Middle School. Rosanna says she remembers you from Inarahan Middle School. And so we've got some people that are tuning in. Remember, if you've got questions about Jay, about his book, about chanting, Komalago tumungo hafimas zanya na klasen kelegwen hungan, whatever it is, please comment, please message me. We have a few questions that are coming in. Keep them coming. But let's take a look real fast, though, at the book itself, because I want to make sure that we get to that. So let me just throw this up on the screen, and then I'm going to share this too. This is the website for the book, The Rules of Engagement in Storytelling. Are you ready to rule your story? And so, rules of engagement in storytelling. And so, ruleyourstory.com. And so, let me just share it real fast. And then Jay, why don't you tell us a little bit about sort of about the book itself. So why did you pick sort of this way of talking about the rules of engagement? What are these 10 rules that you're thinking of? And I like in your notes and your description of it, you said, whether you're talking about your business, whether you're talking about, writing like a speech for like a wedding, stuff like that. And so um tell us more about the book.
Yeah, and so absolutely, Mike. I really appreciate that. The rules of engagement in storytelling. A lot of times, what we're dealing with is an internal battle, really. Um, how can we present this story? How can we reach our audiences? And really, what does that mean? How do we engage them, right? How do we get them engaged in the story we're trying to tell? And so I thought about how can I make this a little really, literally, I was trying to figure out how I can make this clever. And the entire time I was thinking about being a cultural activist. How do we engage military forces, right? How do they act with people, combatants? And the military has that saying, there's a rule to what we do. There's rules of engagement in combat. Well, if we're trying to battle ourselves to try to make sure we have the right message, I thought maybe that would be great to use that in this sense, the rules of engagement in storytelling. How do we engage our audience? So I came up with these 10 rules. And these 10 rules I've written down in notebooks and things over the years, and I've kept it so that I can be better at telling stories myself. And it all started many years ago. You were talking about dating or aging yourself. The very first rule that I learned was from a man named Jerry Lyons, who used to be a journalist with Guam Cable News. He was my very first mentor in the news business on Guam. And so if you don't know what Guam Cable News is, I think you might be able to figure that out by going to the museum. There may be some information there. but but really it's you have to figure out who your audience is, what you're trying to convey. And so getting all that ready is really part of taking that first step in trying to make sure you're engaging the proper people. And so that's where it started. And from there, I just put these other rules in place so that I could help me all along the way in a majority of all the stories that I've ever done. And it can help with how you tell a news story. It can help you in putting together a script for, a short movie that you want to do online on YouTube. It could help with, like you said, the wedding. The best man, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to talk about. I don't know. Should I talk about that time we went to Vegas? You know, right. I don't, so those are some of the things that I was thinking about when I wrote the book. And so there are 10 rules, and really it's to help you in all facets of your life. Because for me, I believe any form of communication that we have with one another, there's a story. And I didn't realize that until recently when I read this one line in a study, and it said the University of Liverpool did a study on communication. And it said that more than 80% of communications between individuals
Oh, hello? Half a day? Half a day? Oh, shoot. Half a day? Uh-oh. Half a day? Kasi yun
Half a
hunog
day.
zo?
Oh, shoot.
Uh-oh. Dispensa zo fanan.
Half a day.
Fanan taigwi si Jay, gagaw gano? Oh yeah, hunggan dispensa zo. Mapus si Jay gi live stream lo pwede po bira tati. Hunggan. Pwede po bira tati si
Oh, yeah,
Jay.
hunggan dispensa zo.
So hopefully he'll be right back. But in the meantime, though, let's watch. Let me just share real fast. So on Jay's website, he has he made there's a little trailer here for his book. Nita Ega Paron Rato.
In every moment we speak, there's a story waiting to be told. Whether you're standing in front of a classroom, raising a glass as the best man at a wedding, presenting a new idea to colleagues, or even giving a eulogy to honor a loved one, your words matter. That's why I wrote The Rules of Engagement in Storytelling, a guide for anyone who wants to elevate their ability to connect, to inspire, and to be remembered.
This book isn't just for authors or public speakers, it's for everyone. Discover techniques that go beyond words, dive deep into the power of authentic connection, and learn how to make your stories resonate with any audience at any time. Jay Pascua, the storytelling strategist with years of experience in cultural storytelling, content creation, and brand building, brings you this essential guide for mastering the art of communication. From classrooms to boardrooms, from weddings to farewells, storytelling is the key that unlocks empathy, understanding, and influence. Don't just tell your story, engage, inspire, and transform it. Get your copy of The Rules of Engagement in Storytelling by Jay Pascua and discover how powerful your words can truly be.
Biba. Oh, all right. Well, Jay has not rejoined yet, and so I'm hoping that he is able to come back. And gabi mensahe, wait. But in the meantime, though, I find let's look real quickly at his website. And Paraguaho, one of the things that I'm just really happy about though is that there are more Chamorros that are writing books, more Chamorros that are telling stories, more Chamorros that are putting themselves out there. And one of the things that I really like about what Jay is doing is that Jay is taking his experiences as a Chamorro and then oh estigi mafatutate, and that Jay is then kind of taking that and using that grounding and then translating it, that storytelling tradition, and then coming up with lessons for a larger audience, for a larger potential audience. And so that's what I like about some of the things that he talks about. And so enigi hao matu hao tati, we were just watching the trailer on your website for your book. So go ahead. The podcast is yours once again. So go ahead and continue. Go ahead and continue with your thoughts about Ileplomo.
Thank you. By the way, just to let you know, we're in the middle of what people are calling the snowpocalypse. And so if my internet goes in and out, it's probably because of that situation. Um, I live now currently in southeast Alabama. So right about where the panhandle of Florida is, and it's snowing. This is a rare phenomenon. I've lived here now in this part of Alabama for about 5 years, going on 5 years, and I've never seen it snow. So the fact that it's snowing now is amazing to me. Um, and that's another story I need to tell you about at some other time. But what really got me into writing about this and understanding my history of trying to tell stories, I started out as a storyteller even before I got into the news business, where I was just trying to fit in. There were two people I looked up to as great storytellers. One was my cousin. So shout out to my cousin Gerald Anderson. Um, and he just had a way of telling funny stories and engaging people, making them laugh. And he was always like the center of attention. And if there was a party, he was always the life of the party, right? And I always looked up to him. The other person I always I listened to on the radio, right, um, was Ray Gibson. And Ray Gibson, back in the day, before he was even in talk radio, he was a DJ and he did skits. And sometimes he even used voice characters. You could tell it was him, obviously, but he would do those, and it was just funny. And I really looked up to the two of those people in my life. Somebody who was external, and then of course my primo. And I was like, man, someday, hopefully, I get to be just like them, right? Um, so fast forward so many years, and when I left the news business, I wanted to continue telling stories, but the stories that mattered to me at that moment were stories of my heritage, my culture, and soon to be legacy. What would I leave for not just my family, but for our people? And I saw that other people were telling our stories. People who came to the island, made it their home for at least a little bit, and then left. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought we've got to put out more stories from our perspective. And so that's when really storytelling transitioned for me into not just about information, but about connection. And and so all of these rules of engagement, gathering all my experiences, even in the call center business, allowed me to put together this book. And so 2 years ago, I embarked on this journey on LinkedIn and helping some clients out. And it made so much sense that I should pivot out of the call center business and into the storytelling business. Because 2 years ago, OpenAI became a thing. ChatGPT became a thing. And I said,
Ah, mm-hmm.
now is the time. Even now, because of AI, I really believe it's more important now more than ever for us to get back to the basics of how we tell stories. Because ultimately, even if ChatGPT spits out some content for you, at the core of it, it's got to be from a human being, you. And so that's why I thought now would be the perfect time to do this.
Ooh. No, thank you for Sidus Masilai for thank you for bringing that up because you know the issue of AI and these sorts of things it's something that I think everyone is bumping into, and some people are celebrating it, some people are doing a movie put movie siya put Terminator na who has to see Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay.
But it's strange. She comes back then in the next movie and then he's the hero. But anyways, but it's interesting because we see, for example, Google has Tomorrow AI, right? Tomorrow AI Translate. And I remember when I first started teaching my Zoom classes, um, there were so many students who said, and so many people on Facebook who, for example, who said, "Oh, if only you could just hit translate and then it would speak tomorrow. It would tell you what people are saying in tomorrow." And so many students in my Zoom classes said, "Oh, why can't there just be an app that translates tomorrow for you?" And there was so much of this yearning and this strong desire to have a machine, have an AI, and have artificial intelligence know tomorrow for you.
Mhm.
And but for me, I was so scared. I was like, but why would you want your phone to know your language and you not to know it? If your whole purpose is that you're trying to take a class to connect to your roots, how are you close to your roots if your phone knows your language and you don't? If you're and if, it's really great if the CEO of Google knows your language, or if Mark Zuckerberg knows your language, or if Elon Musk knows your language, but if you don't know it and you have to rely on an app to tell it for you, then you haven't you're not connected to your ancestors. And so this is why, when you bringing that out, that pushed you into to wanting to talk more about storytelling, that's so true. That's such an important thing nowadays because I feel it so many, I think we see it with AI art generation. So many people who just feel, oh, look, you don't need artists because AI can just make whatever you want. And it's like, oh, ooh. And so I think a lot of people will be intrigued to hear that that is part of your journey that brought you into publishing this book because I think a lot of people aren't thinking about where AI is taking us because so many people were so excited once Google's Chamorro became available for Google Translate, and it still makes lots of mistakes. It's improving though, but it's just for large languages, that's one thing. Large languages will survive for long periods of time. Endangered languages, though, something like that just means if you are a young person who could learn your language, why, when you can just have a program who can tell you whatever you want to know? You don't have to go through the work.
You make a really good point. Here's how I can follow up with this analogy. Remember when you could figure out your grandma's home phone number? Remember when you could figure out the phone number to your girlfriend, right? Without even thinking about it, you would punch in numbers, not a button, a number, several numbers, as a matter of fact. I don't know any number in my directory on my phone. Not one maybe my wife. That's the only person. That's the only person I know the number to. And I understand, here's the thing. I'm not saying AI is bad, right? There's a there's a need for it, obviously, because somebody thought of it, right? But to me, if I'm on my journey, right, I'm not going to grab someone else to show me where to go. I'm going to go on this journey on my own. I'm going to need, though, however, a Gatsai, right, and ads to dug out my canoe, my Sakman. So that's it. AI is my Gatsai. I'm going to use it, but I'm not going to use it to the extent that it's going to actually spit out my autobiography of me, because that's not an autobiography. That would be a biography from ChatGPT. So it compelled me really to write this book. And now that I've written it, the crazy part was I became my own audience because every step I took, I was like, wait, did I do that? Let me go back. So every chapter, right? So the first rule is know your audience. I was like, okay, who's my audience? The next one is, right, start with a hook, right? The next one is make a connection. And so every time I got further, I would go back and look at the chapters I did previously. And so it just, for me, by the time I got to the end of the book, it solidified for me that I was on the right path because I benefited from my own from my own chapters. And I said, okay. But there was a pivotal moment. I had a woman from the UK. She's now a big sister to me. She's my accountability partner when I wrote this book. Her name is Paulette Hallam. And let me tell you the stories in the book. It's because it's a guide, but there's some stories in there. It's me leaving Guam, coming to Alabama, me being a reporter, and then me transitioning to being a storyteller. And I was like, how is this? Hopefully, maybe somebody who's not Chamorro would relate to this. And initially, I tried to get some of my old colleagues or some of my older, editors who helped me along the way as a journalist on Guam. But for whatever reason, that never worked out. And so here is someone in the UK being my accountability partner, helping me realize that the audience could be broad and I could reach people not just on Guam, not just in America, but even across the pond, several ponds for some people. So, um, and and so it became more than just a guide for brand building, content creation, trying to help people, small businesses. It was really storytelling is important in our everyday life, whether we're communicating over Zoom, whether we're saying a eulogy, right? All of these things start with a story, every bit of it. And I don't know how many times in my professional life as a manager, emails, they're horrible for trying to figure out tone unless you are a good writer. I can remember one story in particular. There's a gentleman who had that dry sense of maybe even close to British humor. And sometimes it sounds like he's making fun of you, and maybe he is, right? This was a colleague of mine. And he sent me an email, and I was about to jump over my desk to go get him. And then I realized, wait a minute, let me read this again. And then I went and I said, hey, let me just understand this. Did you mean this? He said, no. I said, okay, now I understand. You can't tell tone from a lot of people's emails. And so internal communications, that type of thing, you have to be very precise sometimes, especially when it's a project that's going to affect the entire team. So,
Oh, Seduce Masse. Seduce Masse. We're getting more comments and questions that are coming in.
oh,
I'm mindful of a few more people that are sending in some questions and comments, and some people that are saying that they like Google Translate. Um, and one person who says that they use it all the time, even though it has lots of errors, actually. But hiya day. But I, for me on this front, it's really, I mean, I've seen this meme, I've seen this quote many times on, especially just this idea that use AI for the things that we don't need humans for ideally, right? Use it to do the drudgery of existence. Don't use it for the creative stuff. Don't
mm,
use it for the artistic stuff. I always see that on like threads every day. Somebody posts that is basically like I want artificial intelligence to do the dishes. I want it to do the laundry. I don't want it to write poetry for me. I don't want it to write movie scripts. And I don't want it to paint for me. And so I think I don't want it to learn the languages for me. Because
right. But let me, so in that sense, though, I do play devil's advocate sometimes with that because from the drudgery, sometimes comes the beautiful poetry from it, right? The I've worked on this painting for 10 freaking years. And I've gone back over and over again. And sometimes I've gone to a second canvas, right? But from all those iterations, the drudgery, the was this the brushstroke over this area the way I wanted it? Does it flow properly as part of this paint? But from that, man, can come beautiful works, right? And if you've been writing a book for years, right? Sometimes because of those iterations, you get the best work. And I have to tell you, this was actually, I had a book about close to maybe 400 pages originally and lost it. I wrote this book originally, let me see, September 2022, and had to write it over again because I said, you know what, let me go into my computer and clean out all the extra articles and things that I really don't need. And somehow the book I was working on ended up in that pile. I nearly cried. Well, I did. I said, I was just, it killed me. And if it wasn't for a collective group of people at the time I was working with on LinkedIn, I probably would not have gone on to do this version. They encouraged me, if you really feel like it belongs out there in the public, then go back to it. And I'm glad I did because the second go around, I honed in my message. It got so much better because I wrote all that stuff in the beginning. And I became more effective at it because I went through the drudgery, right? That thing that nobody wants to do. And I think that's part of the human condition, right? In order to know success, you got to know failure. In order to know, you know, love, sometimes you got to experience hate, right? Or sadness, right? Joy, right? So the opposite. If you don't know the opposite, how will you know the truth, right? That feeling. And so there's so many things that really made me believe once I put it down into the computer that, oh wow, yeah, I think this is going to be something that people are going to need and use. So,
Oh, Biba. Now let's get into some of the questions that we've gotten, and this is a rare thing because usually I talk so much that we don't have enough time to get to the questions that people submit. So I'm mindful. I'm trying to be better. It's one of my goals this year is to not talk so much during Fanachu episodes. But one of the questions is, so your book came out last year.
yes.
Have you had a chance to get positive feedback from any readers about how you might have helped them in their writing or in their storytelling? So have you heard back from anyone who's used your book so far that it might have helped them? So any good vibe stories yet from somebody who's used your book?
So not yet, to be very honest, but the there's a gentleman who's also in the UK, um, who used my story of wanting to put together this book as his inspiration for writing his book. So as I led up to writing the book, I was telling people what I was doing, and I was trying to build up some momentum and some interest in it. And this person, he does a podcast, and really he was just inspired to share his story. And he said at some point he's going to be able to help other people as well tell their story, and he's already doing that through podcasts. But um, and now what he does is he creates these jingles and commercials that are really songs about books. And I'd like to say that um, I was able to kind of help foster some of that idea.
Viva. Bonito ano, bonito. Next question comes from Angela Santos. And
Oh,
Ange, of course, wants to know, what is do you have any I mapodesti na question giminagahed. Hafi
okay.
mas hadong nalalay. What's the deepest chant? You may not be able to answer that. What's the deepest chant?
Ooh.
But so if you just want to recommend or talk about a chant, you can, because I know that's hard saying what's the deepest chant. But or a chant that you might recommend, a chant that you might suggest. Um, we lost late last year, of course, another important chanter and movement in sort of Fino Hadza and language revitalization, si Jeremy Cepeda. Matay si Jeremy Cepeda, and I had been hoping to bring him onto Fanachu last year to talk about his music that he had released and his and so on. And so, but any sort of ideas that you want to share in terms of chants? I think Ange wants your Spotify playlist. Kapag gizo mo unwrapped.
Man, I'm gonna say that I every bit of the all the chants, I think all of them, and even the ones yet to be created, though they're all important. And for me, it's because we're continuing to help honor the legacy that was left to us. I'm getting choked up because it's been ingrained in me the entire time, even here being in Alabama, that I'm still connected to home. And how we connect is through those vestiges that were left to us of our culture through war, through natural disaster, through acculturation, indoctrination, all those things. And here we are. And so every chant is important. Do I have a favorite? I have two from me that from me. I
Oh,
have two favorites from myself.
Maulik. Oh, Maulik and Ange clarified and said Ginin Hogu. Ginin
Okay.
Hogu.
Yes. Yes. So um Fakmata, obviously, because that was the genesis for every chant to follow. And the next one is Gualui Ihalemu. Cultivate your roots. So those are the two. And it was early on that I did those two compositions. And they've changed based on my growing knowledge of Finuhaza. And that I could not think of more. There's so many others that I've composed since then, but those are the two that are near and dear to me.
I seduce Marseille. Seduce Marseille. All right, now another a question, and I can't help but notice you have Carano and Sanchez on the bookshelf behind you, and I think I see Guam History Perspectives on the bookshelf behind you. And
Yes.
so somebody wants to know, because somebody from a writing group that I'm a part of wants to know, Hadzi Zamu Tumaitai, who do you like to read? So any particular authors? Because I know for a writing group that I'm a part of, we often the stories that we like to write, how we tell stories, the books that we like to read. So are there any particular authors that you enjoy reading or genres that you enjoy?
Poetry seems to be the one that comes up multiple times for me. I go back to it all the time. I can't think, I read books, but I'm like, I can't remember a lot of those, but I do remember poems. And Maya Angelou is, it's so odd for me. It's like, why am I even, I feel like one of those fanboys who just say the one thing that everybody else says, but like Maya Angelou is one and Langston Hughes is the other. Those are the two, and I just go back to it over and over again because it really makes me feel like I understand what that feels like, but from a different perspective, if that can make any sense. And that yearning, that looking for something that doesn't exist yet, and the fight to get it, right? I think that's where I feel kind of connected to these two authors.
No, Seduce Masi. Seduce Masi. Now, with this in mind, though, I want to share something real fast before I give you a chance to share some final thoughts. You shared what your favorites were. So nihita ekungo ka now. This is Danyat Nesti. Blast from the past, Sambi.
Oh,
Whoa.
wow.
At an SD. All right, here we go. Sinanganta.
Oh, wow.
Walui ihalekmu, tau-tauku, etumuku, yaman kadamok tu igailogu, teneki malepaho, ilenakamu. Walui ihalekmu, taibini, angokutsu, ilenakamu, kalali halani tenanu, zanggin tozak hali, mo taikinanum. Walui ihalekmu, isinangammu, itseksokmu, imainainammu, itanokmu, koun hasu na inibihi ihalekmu, inibihi ilinanamu, walui ihalekmu, ahatani kamagoonmu, ahatani gwenedzammu, zanggin magahi umagwaisa, maleknya ho mumu sa hogo zanguiza walui ihalekmu munga mafatoni igailagu munga matalaika ile sumu goti ile nalamu munga maatan ilamlam gilulu walui ihalekmu walui ihalekmu nui pamagoonmu, nui pinagsammu, janggin matay su, suli ito ng sanyot mo, janlok na nui mo, Gualu'i ihalok mo, halik mo. Usamonyo ilisat tangi montay tu, munga masumeha, munga mano igay lagu, ihalik mo. Gualu'i ihalik mo. Gualu'i ihalik mo. Gualu'i ihalik mo. Cultivate your roots. My people.
Woo! Oi. Oi. Whew. Ooh, Sengentia now. Ay a day. No, si Diyos masi, Ange na un faisin and now na question hungan. And it's been great listening to sort of your journey on this writer's journey, this storyteller's journey of yours. And so I want to give you a chance now, just to share some final thoughts, to talk about the book. If you wanted to share, I can throw up the website again, just where people can get, if people want to find more information about it, stuff like that, whatever you want to share sort of as we close out the episode.
Absolutely. Thank you. It became a bestseller as soon as it became available when I launched it. And I was very happy about that. And a lot of it was because I was drumming up interest. And my wife also calling the familia, go out there and buy the book. But that telephone alai, right, that goes back years, right, that still is prevalent today. But I have a show that I do on LinkedIn, and it's Saturdays here Central Time and 9 a.m. And it's not about, even though it's on LinkedIn, I'm talking about our culture. It's called Storytime with Jay and Friends. And I'm talking about our culture. What I start out with is music appreciation. So I play music from the Pacific and a lot of Chamorro music, and then talk about it and what it means, right? How I felt about it when I was a kid and what it means to a lot of us in the family and, friends over the years. And then I share a piece that I've written, a poem, a chant, even a short story. And then I end with voice characters. So I introduce my characters, and these characters are kind of everybody that I've interviewed over the years, aunts, uncles, prominent figures, sometimes on Guam and the Mariana Islands. And so I didn't know that I could have an audience outside of Guam and people would relate or even resonate with any of the stories that I was sharing. And it did. And I'll share with you one thing that kind of blew my mind. It's so, it may be trivial to some people, but let me explain. I felt like, and this is it, the core of why I'm doing this, living in my purpose of being a storyteller and a strategist. Stories have the power to unite more so than it can divide. And the more we tell our stories, the better we are able to see the humanity in each and every one of us. And this is why. We all know the human emotions, right? Love, hate, joy, compassion, empathy, right? Sadness, all the emotions. I may not have ever stepped foot in South Africa, but I know what that's like, right? Being a human being and knowing what loss is, knowing what love is, knowing what being a human being is. And one subtle nuance, I'll just share with you. It seems trivial. I wrote a memorial to my grandmother, my mom's mom. And this subtle nuance of how she took her coffee, I thought would Chamorros would be the only people that would know what that was like. She sat there, and instead of using creamer, whether it be liquid or the powdered creamer, she opened up a can of carnation milk and poured it into her coffee. And people from Africa and the Caribbean and Canada and the UK were like, yeah, we used to do that. My family used to do this. And just that subtle nuance I thought was only something pertinent or something that the Chamorro people would know, right? All these other people said, oh, yeah, I did that. We did that.
Hey, bonito ano. Hello? Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Okay. I think the blizzard is coming in.
I think so too.
It's a typhoon condition, blizzard condition, a day. Hello? Are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Again, you're still coming in. Oh, okay. No, so yes, it seems like the video is still coming through now. But go ahead and finish. But that bonito ano nuestro niño. Go ahead and finish your thought though.
Right. And so that's the thing. I realized through story time with Jay and friends on LinkedIn that I'm connecting with people on so many different levels that I could not have ever imagined. And thank you, to COVID. And it sounds weird to say, but these events started really when COVID was on its way out. People were trying to connect because we were basically stuck at home. And this tells me just how powerful storytelling is. We as human beings wanted to connect with the world. So we did it by Zoom, we did it on Google Meets. Some of us even used Adobe, whatever that was. There's all these little different digital means of connecting with one another. We did it. And so it was just for me this evolution of trying to continue being that storyteller and being proud of the heritage and culture I come from and showcasing the stories that people need to hear, the plight of our people to seek self-determination. As human beings, we should have that right from birth. And I talk about that. And there's so many people, right, that can connect with me. The other thing that I connected with other people about, just the trivial things that kind of blow my mind. I was talking about reggae and how reggae has been part of me since I was a kid, but it's so ingrained in all of us, like it just becomes something natural. But people from the Caribbean are looking at me and listening to the music that I've been playing and I'm talking about, and they're like, that sounds so familiar. And it's because it's the music that we grew up with. And I try to make that connection. So there's all these connections that may seem trivial to all of us, but really it's not. These little strands of stories can connect us in so many different ways that we won't know unless we share our stories. And that's the power of storytelling.
Hey, si Diyos mase. Si Diyos mase ay a day. Again. Oh, bonito este. Bonito na mensaje ano. Bonito na conversación este Hugo agradece na un accepta na y kinembida para este. And thank you for writing this book. Thank you for writing this book and making these connections. Hungen, so mga malefa para hamzu todos. Esta hupega gi comments Palestina live stream ruleyourstory.com. Hupega link para Amazon, Sinon Fahangi Amazon. You can buy it on Amazon. You can check it out, ruleyourstory.com. Whether you are looking to write for your business, for your work, whether you're looking to write, for your WhatsApp messages, whether you run your family WhatsApp and you're looking to be the storyteller for your family WhatsApp, how to incorporate the power of storytelling, which is already something in our people. And so just unlocking that, and so and so si this time you come back on Fanachu, pwede todd's a blizzard. Hopefully
Yeah.
no blizzard next time.
Yes. I'm glad that I've been actually able to at least stay for the most part through this, because I usually, when it rains sometimes, the storms that come through can cause havoc. So I'm just glad that I was able to continue through, and hopefully I brought some value to the audience, and hopefully people back home will remember me again.
Oh, Hungen, gof mahaling si Angela Nuhago. Zengwa otru na manhoben ilegniha. Gof zeniha and on a video. They liked the Sinanganta video and the poem. There were some comments about that too. And oh yeah, no, gof bonito este. Si Zeus masi nuhago Jay. Za para hamzu todos ni umeega paru meekungok. Si Zeus masi para attention minzu. Esti finakpo esti episode finatsu. Adios. Este ki manalihi tatlu.